Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining me today. So, I'm just really quickly going to go over why these medications are called proton pump inhibitors and H2 receptor antagonists. And in doing that, I'm going to show you very briefly and as simple as I can how these medications actually work in the body. So, if you're not interested, you can skip to the next video. But if you are, hang in there. I'm going to keep it as short and sweet as possible. Here we go. All right, so in pharmacology, we study agonists and antagonists. So for our purposes here, what you need to know is that an agonist is going to stimulate a cell or a receptor or whatever it is activated to access, okay? Whereas an antagonist is doing the opposite. An antagonist is going to block a receptor. It is going to stop some kind of action, okay? So that's what we're talking about when we say antagonists and agonists. That's why I've put them in green and red. So in our case, we're talking about histamine receptor antagonists. We're going to talk about medication that will block the histamine receptor because histamine is involved in the stimulation of cells in the stomach that are causing the parietal cells to produce stomach acid. And I'm going to go over that in just a minute. All right, so here we go. Proton pump inhibitors. So proton pumps release protons into the stomach. So there's actually a pump that is found in the parietal cell of the stomach, and it secretes acid and just throws acid into the stomach when it's stimulated. And it throws that stomach acid in the form of H plus ions, so hydrogen ions. Once in the stomach, those combine with chloride and they form hydrogen chloride, which is the type of acid we find in the stomach. So these medications, when we talk about proton pump inhibitors, what they're doing is they're blocking that receptor. Okay, so they're blocking the proton pump, so the proton pump can no longer throw those cells, those ions, into the stomach. That's what's happening. So here's a little diagram for you. Okay, so here we have what we will call the stomach, and the stomach expands when we eat, okay? So food is coming into the stomach, and then the stomach is stimulated to secrete acid and all the gastric juices that we talked about. So this area here is the lining of the stomach, okay? And you know there's a mucosal lining, and there's also cells in there called the parietal cells. And those are what are responsible for the pump that secretes acid into the stomach, okay? So there goes the acid into the stomach under normal conditions, okay? And now there is also this yellow shape is a histamine receptor, okay? So that is going to be responsible for histamine that when the stomach is stimulated, when there's eating going on, histamine is going to connect to this receptor and it stimulates the parietal cell even more to secrete that acid and produce that acid, okay? So what happens when we take a proton pump inhibitor? So we ingest a proton pump inhibitor orally, and this will be representative of our proton pump inhibitor because it's a stop, okay? So it comes down into the stomach and it's going down and eventually it's going to hit this receptor. It's going to hit the parietal cell and it's going to block that pump so it cannot pump that acid into the stomach. And it links onto that pump through what we call a covalent bond, which is a very strong bond, which makes this medication so effective for what it does. So that is the action of the proton pump inhibitor. And then the histamine receptor antagonist goes and connects onto the histamine receptor, further blocking that action. So usually you would not be taking both of these, you would take one of them, okay? So the histamine receptor is not quite as effective because the pump is still has the possibility of being activated when you are eating and then putting acid into the stomach, okay? So that's how the proton pump inhibitor blocks the receptor. The histamine receptor antagonist also blocks that receptor, and the amount of stomach acid that is produced is decreased. And that is how these medications work. Okay, so I hope that was helpful, and you can continue on to the next video. I will be talking about the study results. Okay, thanks for joining me. Bye-bye.